I met this gentleman back in the day. He was one of the first. Well, when I went to FTech, it was about 3 or 4 months after I'd been at Andrews already. But of course, I ran into him and some other individuals that are running that first term airman school. And of course, he moved on to career assistance advisor. But yeah, very interesting individual. I've always been curious about your original AFSC, mainly because you've always been in those like side little programs. Um, but I believe you work in the Med group, but we'll get into all that. But yeah, take a quick second and just talk to the people. Introduce yourself. Anything you want to share.
All right. So I'm Julius King, Master Sergeant Julius King. Been in the Air Force about 21 years. Originally, 4P pharmacy. Did that for a while. I've had a couple of different AFSCs, as he's alluded to, some jobs that I've done over the years, especially in the NCR at Andrews Air Force Base. So I got to be an airman dorm leader for a while. I got picked up to DSD there. Uh, Been a full-time additional duty first sergeant up at Walter Reed for the Wounded Warrior unit that they got up there.
Mm-hmm.
Was a med group exec, career assistance advisor, as you said, and now I'm actually back in the med group here on Andrews,
Okay.
but worked over at Bowling, worked inside the Pentagon. Um, yeah, done it all. Deployed a couple of times as non-medical, worked in the DCC, and worked as TCN. Of course, everybody's kind of done a
Mm-hmm.
little TCN
Yeah,
duty. So
love that,
yeah,
John. Interesting. You said 21 years.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, is retirement on the horizon, or you going to keep going until they put you out?
I don't know yet. I don't
That's
know
fair.
yet.
That's fair.
Um, Retirement's on the horizon, so definitely plan for it. But
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of different jobs, man. So I'm gonna be honest. I'm one of those people that I was still having fun, and every time I thought
Mm-hmm.
about getting out, I was just like, I was given an opportunity, right? So like,
Gotcha.
hey, you start planning for getting out, and then somebody's like, oh man, you know what? We want you to come be the group exec, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm having fun doing this.
That's
Then
fair
you go
enough.
back to your career field, and somebody's like, hey, would you like to be a first sergeant up? Yeah, I'll do that. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Career assistance advisor, probably the best job I've ever had in my Air Force career.
Wow.
Loved it, loved it,
Why is
and
that? Why is that?
oh man, so being a career assistance advisor is like being a first sergeant without having to give people bad news,
True. True.
right? I love being a first sergeant. A first sergeant job. Many people think like, oh man, it's like you get in trouble, you gotta go see the shirt. But
Mm.
really, even before that, like we're here always to help. I love being a first sergeant, especially for it was a wounded warrior unit.
Mm.
So you get to see people at their worst, right? Everybody's hurt in some way, going through something in some way, and you get to help them through that. Either with helping them transition out the military or returning them back to duty, which a lot of people really want to do. So I thought that like I had reached it. Becoming
Mm.
a career assistance advisor, you get to catch people before they're hurt and help them navigate with what they want to do in life. There's some people I think even me and you have talked about it before, and it's like I don't think this for me anymore.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's like this is but talking through that, and some people you talk to, and it's like you're right, this ain't for you, and you help them with that. And then there's people that you talk to, and you're like, you know what, maybe right now that's not for you. Let me help you get you to that next step. And then when you see people go on and continue in their greatness, not what you want them to be, but what they truly aspire to be and helping them get to that point, man, I don't think there's any better feeling in the world than helping folks. That's true. And that's outside the Air Force, right? Because
Facts.
we tell people as CAAs, like, oh man, we got to keep people in, keep the people in. And I had a mentor of mine say, man, our job really isn't about keeping people in. It's about getting people to where they really want to be. And there is no other job that I've been in where you got to see it and do it a little bit more and help people um, achieve whatever their dream was, whether it was commissioning or retraining into another job or whatever the case may be, transitioning to the guard and getting out to do whatever. We got to do everything, and we just got to teach. So um, yeah,
I remember when I went there and spoke with you, and I ended up running into one of my subscribers that were in your class. I don't, were you in the career system advisor's
yes, I
position?
was. I was.
Okay, cool, cool. Hey, that was just like you kind of alluded to, like the feeling of helping people. That feeling never gets old, especially like when they say you're the like. I still get comments like I got a couple today that said you're the reason why I joined. And it's kind of like a good. I mean, as you know, I'm on my way out. I'm doing skill bridge currently in Florida. But just kind of seeing other people that are pretty much taking my spot, like they're just replacing me. But hearing people say like you're the reason why I made this decision, I'm like, bro, that's crazy. Because what if the decision was horrible that they made, and now they're gonna blame me? But to like see people in person, like I run into people at the gym or around base, or I go to Lackland every now and then, just driving through, and just you run into people and they recognize you, and like that feeling never gets old. And it's honestly humbling. So I can imagine being in your position where you're helping people decide on changing career fields, or like I'm thinking about getting out, but there might be a chance that kind of like as you mentioned, like I would retire, but I got a new opportunity over here, and now it's just change of pace, change of scenery. It gives you a
Yeah,
little bit more wind in your wings to kind of like maybe I'll give it a couple more years, or I'll extend one more good one, especially his
one
first
more,
term. Like
one more, just one more.
right, just a couple more, just see where it goes. Because I'm honestly jealous of people that 21 years, and like at any moment you can just press the button. All right, I'm done. Um, but obviously there's something keeping you there, and so me being no, I'm getting out after my first contract, like, it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah,
the cost sharing thing was there, and I came and talked to you at that one point, like I was trying to get out of finance, and then I was like, oh, then I got a deployment, and then I got
I remember.
orders, and it seems like every time I was about to push the button on something, I would just get moved, and I was like, I think AFPC is listening to my conversations, like they just at the last second they just move you, so it's definitely interesting. I did want to ask you because this came up during FTech. I don't know if you're willing to share with the people, but you used to be a rapper
Oh
back
man,
in the day.
yes,
Share with the
yes,
people how you used to MC back in the day.
man. So look, and it's really funny that you say that. I'm a shamelessly plug something after I answer this question. So way back, especially like when I first came in, I ain't gonna say when I first came in, but I was in the military like when the hype of chopped and screwed came up. But before that,
Mm,
I, um, I grew up in Georgia and in Texas. So when
wow.
I was going through middle school, high school, screwed music was just coming out. So everybody knew how to freestyle,
Right.
right? I was one of those people. But I was
Oh
actually
Lord.
just a little bit of good, right? So I get
Mm,
to like my third duty station, and a guy knew he actually was like putting out mixtapes. And he's like, oh man, you should get on one. So I don't know if I can say this, a drunken night, I decided
uh,
I'm gonna get in the booth. And
right.
I did like 15 songs in one
Jesus.
night. Right. All freestyle. So I actually have it's still on the CD. I actually have the CD here. Um,
Goodness.
fast forward, I got a friend, he's actually really, really dope. Dope underground rapper named Rob White. He was a boom operator in the military. He actually just became a boom operator so he could sell CDs across the world. And then
See.
he got out. Like he literally got out.
Wow.
Um,
Dang.
but he put me on a song. The song is on Spotify. I'm still not releasing it.
Dang.
Still not releasing it.
He holding back on the people. See.
Man, but here's funny thing. So I've been into poetry for a very, very long time. Have a poetry book that's about to come out, but released a poem. I think I put it on Facebook one time, and a friend of mine that's a producer was like, "Hey, bro, can I do something with this?" And I'm like, "Ah, yeah, I ain't think nothing about it." And he put it with a beat, and he's like, "Man,
Mm,
this is like a strong message. You got anything else?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I've known this dude since basic training, and he's in Japan, Golden Mine, and he was like, "Man, we're gonna put together a EP." So
wow.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we put together an EP. It's called Views You Don't Hear. It's just five songs, but it's a strong message to me.
Mm,
It's something that it's different poems that I wrote about basically being black in America.
mm,
It's literally what the album would be about being black in America, especially at the height of we were, I don't want to say the wrong way, but at a time where it seemed like every time you turned on the news, there was somebody getting killed or beat,
Mm,
police
yeah.
or protest, or our voices weren't being heard. And during that period of time, up until I want to say the last one I wrote was like last end of last year, and I just wrote, like I said, I wrote several of them, but there's five that we selected, and it told a story. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, that's out right now. But so that one I'll release. That's actual official. But yeah,
Hey, that's love. Hey, make sure I get a. I'll be watching your Facebook. I'm like, make sure I get a link to that because, like,
I'm gonna
first of
send.
all,
I'll send you the link, man. It's actually out on all streaming platforms. So it's on iTunes. It's
okay, okay,
on all of that. And I just released. I ain't gonna say I just released. I released the video first. I released the
mhm,
video on YouTube and on TikTok. That's what
okay.
everybody does TikTok. But
Hey,
yeah, so I'll
marketing,
shoot it to you.
get
I'm
it
gonna
out.
shoot it to you.
Say
I'm gonna shoot
less.
it to you.
I mean, there's a stigma of, you know, every black person has a mixtape. I mean, I'm one of those people that can't freestyle. I cannot rap. I can't dance. Like I have enough rhythm to play sports at a high level, but that's it. Like my rhythm is limited to I play piano, I play drums, I play organ, I play saxophone, and I play sports. I can't dance and I can't rap. So I'm like, people look at me, I'm like, yeah. And of course, I have a way with words, but just not rhythmically. But when it comes to like closeted rappers or people that just rap on the side or freestyle. They've been doing this since they were youngin. I don't know if you remember Bush. He was stationed at Andrews. He was rapping, and right before he left, he got orders to Tyndall. And right before he left, I remember telling him, and I'm not ashamed to say this on this platform. I told him like, bruh, just put it out,
Yeah.
just put it out. Who cares? Like I have a podcast. There are people that have that Joe Rogan numbers just dwarf. Like it's not like I don't even show up on anybody's radar, but I put it out anyway because it's not the point. The point is not to be the size of Joe Rogan today or tomorrow. It's about just doing what I enjoy doing, put it out. And of course, I am monetized on YouTube and I'm monetized on various podcast platforms. I was doing it before I was getting paid. So
Yeah.
often you see a lot of people that they have the gift of rapping, like poetry. Like first of all, I read the old poets. I love reading the old writers, Oscar Wilde and the 19th century, 20th century thinkers. Um, but also poetry itself, it's not something that everyone can do. It's like overthinking is not a luxury everyone has. Like some people can't think
Mhm.
their way through something. So I always encourage people if you have any type of gift, no matter if it's mainstream or it's just something you do on the side, just put it out.
Yeah.
Especially with the internet being as it's free real estate, everyone can put stuff out. Anchor is a wide open platform. Anyone can have a podcast. Anchor will distribute. It'll be on Spotify the same day. It'll be on Apple Music the same day. I YouTube is wide open. Post your music
It
videos.
is.
TikTok will send you viral. You keep posting on TikTok, you're gonna go viral. Like at some point, they're gonna send you around the world a couple times. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking out for that.
I gotta say something, man, because you ain't just gonna just jump over there like that. You like, yeah, I don't have any rhythm except for when it comes, and then you name like five instruments. That take rhythm. I played one. I played the trumpet, and that was like
Uh-huh.
hard enough. You just first off, piano is like one of the hardest things to play, and you like,
Mm.
oh yeah, I play piano. I do this. Oh, and I play sports at a high level. But other than that, nah, I ain't got no
Yeah.
rhythm. Oh, that's
Yeah.
rhythm.
I mean, you got a backdoor brag every now and then, but uh
Yeah, just
there's
let it in there.
oftentimes like I was like, if I could trade in, like I'll trade the saxophone in for the ability to dance. Like because I dance on the basketball court, but you take me to the club, I'm like, I'll do a two-step the entire night because that's
That's all
that's
you
all I
need.
got in my bag. Low key, like that's all I got
That's
in
all
my
you,
bag. I'm like, but it gets me where trying to go. Like, bro, I'll put variation on the two step, speed it up, slow it down,
yeah.
but it's a two step. So
It's a
like,
two-step, man.
it's the classics. I'm like, I don't got too deep of a bag in that, but I'm often jealous of like, bro, if I could do a podcast, if I'm articulate, why can't I rap? If I'm athletic, if I can do a Euro step, why can't I do a crip walk or something? Like I'm constantly comparing myself, but um, I'm often jealous of like the creatives in different areas than I'm creative in. I'm like, well, I can edit video, but I'm pretty bad at photography editing. Well, some people will love to trade, so it is
Man,
what it
look,
is.
I just want my selfies to be pretty decent when I want to post
Yeah,
them on IG. Like, yeah, that's all I'm
facts.
aiming for. You doing a full podcast, and playing
Mm.
the piano, which is on my bucket list. Like, yeah, I'll trade in all this if I could play the piano. I'd
Man,
have one just
it's a
sitting
lot
in the
easier
middle
than
of
you think.
my
It's more of my Asperger autism spectrum stuff where I just like my boy. I met in upstate New York. He just got out the army, but he's in San Antonio now. This man, when I tell you, if you leave an instrument around him, he's gonna learn it, and it's not gonna be the way I learn things. Where I just like the way I play piano is I don't read music, so I just listen to music and then I play it. I can't
Mm,
explain it. It's literally what they will call a gift. Um, but he learns instruments the same way I do, but also the right way of learning. Like he can read music too, but he has nobody teaches him. He doesn't go to a trainer. He doesn't go to anyone and sit down with them. And they walk him through the steps. He just picks up a bass guitar, electric guitar, all the instruments I
that's
play,
good.
and he watches me play piano, and he'll just watch me play it, and then he'll play it. I'm like, what kind of spectrum are you on, bro? Like you are certifiable, straight jacket. You need to be in somebody's hospital, bro. Like, but he's
Yeah,
just gifted, and
some people
it's what
are, man.
amazes me about like, especially like podcast platforms where I get to ask good questions, is because you get to truly discover like, all right, they're at work for 8 to 12 hours. They're sitting behind the desk. They may or may not be enjoying themselves, and there's only a certain amount of things we can talk about in certain settings. But you discover how people have talents. I'm like, the Air Force has no way of harnessing these talents because I could play in the Air Force band. I just probably wouldn't pass the audition because I can't read music. But if they let me hear what I'm supposed to play, I could play it. Like if they say sit at the
Yeah,
piano and read this music and play it, I'm like I can't read it. But if somebody played it right before me, I could play right behind them. So it's different, especially in environments like such as the military where you're kind of stuck in between the lines and like you have people that are
yeah.
talented. Like who knows who could sing this Star Spangled Banner just and blow it up, just go off, but you just never hear their voice because they're in the military. So
Mm,
it's different, and of course the environment is kind of limiting, but it's also an advantage because you have that guaranteed check that you can use a lot of those resources and pour into your side projects. Like I bought all this equipment and I built my YouTube channel during my career. Like I started in tech school, so it's definitely an advantage to have some stability from the Air Force to be able to leverage into a lot of things that you enjoy on the side. So it's definitely interesting. And side thing on what you mentioned, for those of you who don't know, this man is one of the flyest Niz out here when it comes his shoe game on 10. This man,
oh man,
his colors be like just I think he went to Lowe's first and matched the color cards. I'm like, all right, this
I do
matches this, and
sometimes, man. Hey,
he be on 10 with it. I'm like, man, if I could just dress like him at any moment in my life, let alone, you know, in my seasoned years, I I, I wear the same thing for most of the time. Like I wear black. Yeah, and it's probably the military in me that has me so used to wearing the same uniform every day. But
hmm,
yeah, well, where'd that level of dressing come from? Like, has that always been a thing for you?
yeah, always, man. I'm from Georgia, so it's it was always a thing. Like you had to look presentable. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
true.
I don't want to say presentable, but like for us, like you couldn't just wear something plain. Like, hey,
Mm,
back then, if you had, back then we had chaps. We didn't have polo shirts. We had the chaps, Ralph
yeah.
Lauren. But if you had the chap shirt on, you had to have a hat. Your shoes
Mm,
had to match it. And it got to a point, maybe your shoelaces had to match. You could have on some white shoes, but the shoelaces need to match the shirt that you had on to
right.
match the hat. Probably a bit extreme back then, but as I've gotten older, one thing that I've wanted to do is always I just dress with what looks good to me. Some stuff I actually buy,
Mm,
I'm like, man, this is ugly. I know ain't nobody else gonna have it, so I'm gonna wear it anyway. I don't like doing, I probably got stuff that everybody has, but I don't like doing stuff that everybody does. Like, everybody
mm,
goes and buys this pair of Jordans and they wear it the same day. So you go out and you see like 30 people with the same pair of shoes on.
right.
Like, I don't want those shoes no more.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, man, I try to make sure that even if I'm just putting on some sweatpants, just I want to look a certain way when I leave the house. And the funny thing is, I have about four people I'm close with. They actually put out clothing. So like most of the stuff, especially when I'm posting on there, I don't post a lot of brand name stuff anymore
mm,
because for the most part, like that's free publicity. And if I'm gonna give
yeah.
free publicity to somebody, I'm gonna give it to people that I know, love, I want to
Mm,
support. So like even this pressure, My homeboy that I grew up with, he got his own clothing line, and he literally just be like, "Hey man," he be dropping stuff. I'm like, "Man, that looks good," and he'll be
Mm.
like, "What you want it in, or what do you want?" I'll be like, "Hey man, I want a shirt that says that, but I want it to look like this." And he'll press it up. He'll be like, "Man, that's yours. I ain't gonna make no more like that. And if anybody wants something like that, they gotta pay extra." And I'll be like, "All right." So this, and I don't know if you knew Chief Al Wells.
I don't think so.
Okay, he has he has a clothing company out. So like the Lions mindset loading and stuff like that. He has workout gear, but just a lot of folks that I know they have clothing. So I'm like, man, if I'm gonna go spend $40 out there on whatever Nike or
Mm.
Polo, Georgia
Yeah.
folks, Southern folks, we love some Polo. So if
Right.
I'm gonna
Right.
spend money on that, man, I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna just spend it with my folks. I don't want no discounts. I don't want nothing for free. and,
Mm.
and let me put your name out there. I value relationships. I know that turned from the question about my clothing, but I value relationships, man.
Mm.
Uh, so you alluded to it, like, hey, I put this out. You do your podcast because of you, right? And Joe
Yeah.
Rogan, who cares, right? People will post Joe Rogan over and over, never met the man. I done shook
Yeah.
hands with you. We done had conversations. Heck, when I was starting up doing some of my stuff on base, I had you. Hey man, can you come out? Can you come speak to folks? That's when
Mm.
that's when his name is Airman Washington. He was
Yeah. I remember.
spooked. He was, oh my God, sorry, you know him? I'm like, yeah, man, he the reason, people was coming up to me like, is it okay if I come in your office and speak to him? But that's
Mm.
the type of stuff that I love, man, because at some point it's not about that, but at some point I can look back. You're gonna do great things. I can look back like I sincerely support that man, not
Mm.
because oh man, he got his own TV show. Man, I've been loving him since, and they'll be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Y'all remember when he was helping put people in the military? Y'all act like y'all ain't want to give him no shine. Like man,
Yeah.
let's get with folks at the bottom and help build people up that we
Yeah.
know, not just celebrities, man. That's how I feel. But anyways, that was a
No, no, that's
um,
facts. And
yeah,
it's something. It's kind of like when I think about people I want to bring on the podcast. It's not just people I've met, but I mean, everyone that's been on here at some point has impacted me. And if they haven't already, well, first of all, I think everyone at some in some way or another, even if it's indirectly, they impact you. But when I see potential in people, I'm like, I need to get in touch with them before they blow up. I have a collab
yeah,
coming up in probably the next week or so. And he currently has around 150,000 subscribers, but I met him
okay,
when he had around 1,000, and I dwarfed him by like 10 or 11,000. I had like 12 at the time, and he had like 1 or 2,000. But I
mhm,
saw the potential. I was like, bro, he about to blow up in like no time. Let me get on the ground floor of this because I mean,
yeah,
it's like investing. Like, Brett, let me invest in this. Let me give him some free, advice. And of course, now he's punching down now. Like now he's giving me shout outs. He's like, yo, y'all go subscribe to my boy. And then we could doing a collab coming up. But just seeing people's potential, but also realizing these people have impact on your life. And of course, my career
yeah,
would not be complete without like truly looking back and like, all right, all these people that I've come in contact with, um, even if it was just briefly, like we met at Andrews and I've been at several bases since then. Um, but there's still impact there, and there's still conversations that I need to have. Certain conversations that it may have been one or two lines that you may have mentioned that neither one of us remembers, but I may have made decisions based off that single moment that has helped me make certain decisions that were necessary. So I don't take it lightly, especially when it comes to relationships. Like I value people, and it's partly why I had to get out because if my anxiety is causing me to mistreat people or I'm starting to view people as triggers and not people, like honestly,
mm,
with my issues with anxiety, it's gotten to a point where I'm like, all right, I just need to get out. But the relationship doesn't end. Like I'm leaving the Air Force. Air Force is not a person. It's where I work. But
yes,
the people are the people. So just because I'm getting out of the military doesn't mean I can't reach back and they can't reach to me. Like if you started a podcast one day or you started a clothing line, y'all got outlets. You got somebody in the media already. So
yeah,
there's access. There's access. And of course, something Kevin Samuels has mentioned is like, having your own. Like if you go to black community, why don't we have our own banks? We don't have our own hospitals. We have our own schools, but we're missing certain infrastructure pieces because we're all fighting against each other instead of building together. Like we have all the pieces. We just got to make them work. It's called integrated complexity. Like if everyone works together, does their part. I'm not Kobe, but Kobe had Shaq. Like you got to dump it at some point. You drive to the basket, you got to dump it. Like you got trees down there.
Yep.
So I'm definitely all for that. As far as just building on top of what someone else built before you. Speaking of Georgia
National
fan,
champion.
anybody got time for that? See, I personally don't mind admitting that I'm a bandwagon Alabama fan.
Thank
Now,
you.
i-
Thank you.
in my own defense, they were the first college football team I ever watched play, and so it
Okay.
just so happened that I saw them on Sports Center. I'm like, you know what? That's my college football team, and it just so happened they were the best dynasty in the history of SEC, and not only the SEC, but in the history of college football. Like it's just not even close at this point. They get the best recruits. Georgia gets all the
No,
crumbs. Like
actually, we got like the #1 recruiting class. Let's go there.
this year, this year.
I mean, what have you done for me lately? That's what we saying.
Well, I
Go
mean,
dogs.
before this year, I mean, I can't remember last time y'all won anything. I mean, it's just hasn't been. Nick Saban, he just goes around the country, gets what he wants. And then Georgia, I mean, SEC is competitive already. Like LSU gonna get theirs, Georgia gonna get theirs, Texas A&M, like all these, Auburn,
Yeah.
they're gonna get theirs. But obviously, Alabama has to eat first. Like let the grown folks eat first. The kids come get the crumbs and a little piece of cake after.
Man, the
That's
tide
just
might
how
have
that
turned,
works.
man.
I
Tide might
don't
have
know.
turned. Unintended. Pun intended.
Yeah,
Might be a new day, man.
it was a good game. It was a good game. I mean, it was a minute ago, but um, yeah, it was one of the few games I watched. I mean, I don't usually sit down and watch a full game, but I think I caught that one. But yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. You said you grew up in Georgia. Did you go to college down there? You went just high school and
So, dad was military.
mm,
So, was born in Georgia. We moved some places. My dad actually got out the military at one point, then went back in.
okay.
Um, so did a couple of like a year here, a year there, but grew up in Georgia, moved to Texas for about 4 years, almost 5 years, and then we moved back to Georgia. So I say Georgia, it's where I was born at, it's where I went to elementary, middle school, and high school, and where I
Hmm.
graduated from. I did some middle school and some high school also in Texas. So when people ask Georgia and Texas, that's where it's at. But primarily grew up in the South most of my life.
Okay, cool, cool. I feel so good being back in the South. I mean, I
You
was in
good?
the South in New Mexico, but that's not the
That's not
South.
the South.
That's the that's
That's
something out there.
Midwest.
I don't know what Cannon Air Force Base. It wasn't as bad as people said it was, but it's not the South. Like it's just different out there. So I mean, I'm in Southern Florida. And even Southern Florida is not really the South. It's Southern Florida,
It's city. It's real city out there.
pretty much. I mean, the area I'm in, it's basically the main attraction is the ocean, which that's why I came. I just
Okay.
wanted. I'm trying to be near some water, but um, yeah, I had the option. I was in Orlando today. Like I have the option to be in Orlando or Miami in a couple hours. Um, that's what I need in my life is like access. Like DC kind of turned me into a city boy. I just love the amenities. Like if I want something 24 hours, I just pick something. If I want a 24-hour gym, I got it. If I want to
Got it.
go to a restaurant, a grocery store, I have options. I
Yeah,
remember the
so
first weekend I got to DC, I went to every club in one weekend. It was dope. It was dope. Had no business doing what I was doing out there, but I mean,
hey,
just
man, you gotta live.
facts. I mean, just be able to say I did it because there's some experiences I don't even want to try, but to go to DC and not, I've never been to a museum. Like, how did you live in DC for 4 years? You never been to a museum. You never went to a club. You didn't go out to brunch. You didn't do DC properly. Like, you have to go back now. You got to redo it.
Yeah.
So I have no regrets after PCSing and then moving away from there. I have no regrets about not like I have vlogs of what I did there. So, is that your only base you've been at? I'm sure you've been all over the place.
Man. So I started out, I was fortunate. Started out in Ramstein over in Germany,
Okay. Jesus.
then Landstuhl in Germany,
Wow.
and then I went to McDeal out in Tampa.
See.
My first couple of years, I was just like, man, again, I ain't never leaving, right? Like I got to
Right.
do everything. And then I went to Eielson Air Force Base in North Pole, Alaska.
That's a L. That's a L. I was
And
there.
I went there in the summer, right? So I
Mm,
left I left Tampa, Florida. It was like 100 degrees. Got on the
yeah.
plane, landed in North Pole, Alaska. I want to say it was like 55 degrees. Everybody had on
Mm.
shorts. I had on like a
Yeah.
full sweatsuit. I had on a coat. I'm like, man, what is
Mm.
going on around? They like, man, it's a good day today. It's like,
Right.
oh, it's gonna be a long couple of years.
Mm-mm.
Um, but Alaska was just a great experience for me. Period. Seeing different stuff. After that, went to McConnell in Wichita, Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't as bad as people think. Um,
Okay.
and then I came to Andrews, man. I actually BOP'd here.
Okay.
So wanted to never lived on the East Coast like that. When I say East Coast, of course, from Georgia, everybody's like, that's the East Coast too. I'm like, nah, that's the
Right.
South. Right.
Facts.
But it's the South. Like for me, I'm like, no, it's the South. What do you mean? Not the East
Right.
Coast. But
Some
so I
states
went,
don't have regions. They're just the Georgia's the South. Like
yeah,
even it doesn't matter where it's at. It's the South.
yeah. Then everybody from Maryland's like, oh, we're the South too. No,
Nah,
no,
hell no.
it's the East Coast. Y'all wear Tim's every day. It's the East Coast.
Right. Like that's
Yeah.
cultural appropriation from New York anyway. Anybody that wears Tim's, like they, I'm from New York. Now, although I'm from the state of New York, New York doesn't want to claim me. Like people from the city be like, "But no,
Oh
you're
yeah.
from upstate New York." I'm like, "No, I'm from the state of New York. I wore Tim's too. I do have polo boots, but I wore Tim's. I was raised in the state of New York, but of course, since I'm not from one of the boroughs, I'm like, bro,
Boroughs. Yeah.
I rode the subway. I've done my thing, but I don't get no love. But
Mm-mm. And polo boots is a Georgia thing. It
I
just is
don't know
what
about
it is.
that. I don't
Man, it's
know.
a Southern thing.
We was rocking Abercrombie and Fitch and Ralph Lauren when I was like 2011 when I was in high school. Like we was rocking that. Like that was staple. Now I came in around 2008, 2007, where like the white tee was the thing,
Yeah, that was
long
our thing.
white tees. But then
Yeah.
we slowly transitioned, and all the polos came out, and all the Abercrombie and Fitch, the giraffe, uh, the alligator. I can't remember Lacombe or something, whatever it's
Oh,
called.
Lacoste. Yeah,
Yeah,
man. You got
Lacoste.
Lacoste on.
Yeah. And I was like, bro, I ain't trying to chase y'all, bro. I'm wearing my little Sean John, bro. Like, don't play with me. Sean John,
John, yeah.
Fubu. Like, I was on the old rag. Like, I was on that TJ Maxx and Ross type outfits. Um,
Man.
yeah.
Did y'all have Duckhead up there?
Duckhead? No, I've
Yeah.
never heard of
See,
that.
that's a real Southern thing. Yeah, Duckhead clothing. Somebody from
Dang,
Georgia used to be like, y'all know what Duckhead is. That was polo before polo was anything for us. We were rocking Duckhead.
dang. Yeah, I ain't never heard of that one.
Everybody everybody gonna look it up now. Like,
Right, you might put him back on the map. Like, I never heard of that.
I need my sponsorship dollars, man.
Facts, facts. Like, right, cut me a check real quick. Question: what has you excited? What has your attention currently?
I was excited about my poetry EP. That was
Okay.
something that really got me hyped up and looking forward to putting out the next project, which we'll probably do here in the next couple of months. We'll finish that up. That's
Mm-hmm.
what got me excited. Vulnerable moment thing that has me excited is being a better father.
Okay.
Um, a lot of people, for folks in the military, you hear people talk about it as chiefs or retirement ceremonies
Hmm.
about cherishing family. Like that's one of you go to any retirement ceremony for chiefs. Most time, what do they say? Like one regret I have is I missed a lot with my children. Um, I am not immune to that, right? I've had a very adventurous career,
Hmm.
but I'm not afraid to say I haven't always been like the best dad. Like I've been a great airman,
Mm.
um, been a great military member, but as far as like I've been married before, so as far as being like a great husband, I wasn't that.
Mm.
I haven't always been a great friend, and I haven't always been a great father. Um, and that's just being honest about it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, man, I'm father of the year, but I don't know exactly when it clicked for me. But at some point, I was just like, man, I gotta get this thing right. I have a son. My son's
Mm.
in the army. Um, so my oldest is in the army, and speaking to him, we talk every day, literally some shape, form, or fashion. I talk to him every day. I don't care if it's just sending a picture or
Mm.
a small text. Hey, we talk every day. Um, I've learned so much from the time he was born to now. Um, I have a young daughter. I have twin girls too. Um, but realizing like, man, I was a part of my son's life, but not as much as I should have been or could have been.
Mm.
And seeing that he still loves me, still looks up to me, he's still helping me grow, has made me realize like, man, you're not gonna get this opportunity too many times, right? Like I could
Yeah.
have easily just been he could easily be one of those kids that's like, yeah, my dad, he's all right, you know what I'm saying? But he always was working. I don't want to be
Mm.
seen as that anymore. So I've been taking the opportunity or trying to be more involved. Um, being in the military, of course, it affords us a certain lifestyle, right? I know when my paycheck is coming. There's certain things I don't think about, right? Even with my kids, like, oh, they're
Mm.
sick, take them in the hospital. I don't even know what
Right.
insurance like. People, I hear people talk about like insurance. I'm like, what? You had to do what? You couldn't just walk like I don't see that,
Right.
right? So a lot of stuff I didn't even compute. I didn't even like, oh, hey, birthday's coming up, cool. Like, here's let's make sure we get this. But I didn't do a lot of planning. I didn't do a
Mm.
lot of stuff like, hey, what do you want? What can I do for you? Let me make sure I provide this and the occasional nugget of information or the hug or the supporting them at an event. But realizing now, like, man, I want to be more involved in my children's life. Even kiddos being older, getting grown, like I still am going to be a part of that, but realizing how much more involved that I need to be. But even more importantly, that I want to be, because there's stuff you need to do, but it's even better when you want to do it. And I
True.
really want to do it and be able. So that's what excites me. It excites me speaking to my kids and them being happy to talk to me and being able to give them a hug. I leave work a little bit earlier every day.
Mm.
But it used to be a time, and I just be like, "Oh man, I gotta work," and I just knew
Yeah.
they were being taken care of, right? So I didn't think about it. Um, but after a while, you get tired of you miss the moments. So I'm
Yeah.
excited that I get to be a part of the moments that I would have missed if I was too heavily involved in promotions and
Mm.
chasing the next job or whatever the case may be. So that's what excites me the most is my kids, walking in my passion as far as my poetry thing. As you said, if you got
Mm.
a passion for something, do it. Just put it out there. I've always done
Facts.
poetry. I ain't never released nothing. I'll be honest. I was just
Mm.
like, what if somebody hates it? Or what if somebody's
Right.
like, oh, that was. I even when when I put the album out, man, I was scared. Like
Mhm.
I ain't want to talk to nobody for a little bit, and on the inside, to a certain point, it's like, man, hey, somebody give me a critique. I want to be able to do it better the next go round.
Mhm.
And as everybody was like, oh man, it's good. It's like, is it good? It's like if your baby's ugly. Like
Right.
everybody's like, oh, it's so precious. But it's like,
Yeah. I don't wanna kiss it, I wanna hug it, just nah, it's
yeah,
good, it's good.
you good.
Leave it over
Cute
there.
outfit. Look at it.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I think at this point, man, I'm just like, I wish I had your drive back then earlier. I probably would have accomplished a lot more, but I was so caught up in like, oh man, what if nobody likes it, or what if this is whack?
Mm.
What if it's just cool with my friends? But now I get a little nervous. Like, man, I hope the content is appreciated.
Mm.
But I'm at a point now, like, man, I'm just happy it's out there, and for the folks that it's
Right.
meant for, they get it. And
Yeah.
for people who it wasn't, hey man, appreciate you even giving it the time, right? Even if you gave it 30 seconds and it's not my groove, I appreciate you. I appreciate the consideration. So yeah,
Facts.
I'm just happy walking in passion, man. Walking in purpose and seeing my kids grow up. That's it.
That's real. That's for real. I mean, especially as relates to just putting it out. I mean, first of all, on YouTube, you can dislike the video, you can up like the video. If you watch it, I get paid either way. And it's not all about money. It's also about like the fulfillment of doing that thing. But usually the first action is the hardest, and it's what I kind of like. I'm surrounded like Chroma. Chroma should have been had him a podcast. He should have been had some type of platform he should have been on. But of course, it's usually that obviously it is a time commitment. You got to have some type of planning, and then of course it does take a
Mhm.
financial investment if you want to do it right. Like audio is the most important part of any type of video or podcast. The audio is number one, and then of course content, and then video is like secondary, whatever. Um, but yeah, so it does take a little bit of work, but that first step is usually the hardest because that fear is attached to it, and ultimately that's why I put a lot of my emphasis on is like if I can just get that first step going, like just do the first thing, post that first TikTok, post the first video, post the first podcast, call it what it is, like advertise it. You still got to advertise it. You got to put it on your Facebook. Everybody's going to see it, and like
Mhm.
one or two people might like it. It might be your mom, and you might like it too. And like it is what it
Mhm.
is. But ultimately, people don't see the accumulation journey. People just see the final numbers. Joe Rogan sitting at 15 million, and people look at that number, but they don't see the climb. Like the boy I'm supposed to be doing the collab with. Like I saw him when he was at 1,000 subscribers. Now people see him at 150, and they think, oh yeah, everything's just handed to him. I see his super
Mhm.
chats rolling in, and like he said, he was doing YouTube for a minute, and nobody was watching. He was about to quit that junk. I've been doing YouTube since 2017, and so it takes a first of all,
It
people
takes
don't
a
realize that YouTube is not about going viral. TikTok is about going viral. YouTube is about accumulation. You make a lot of videos at the highest quality you're capable of with the highest level of intent, and it accumulates into you get paid every month. And it's not about having a million videos or a million views on a video. It's about having a million videos with 10 views each. That adds up into a check. And so the ads go on that junk either way, as long as you're not, demonetized for posting out some foolishness. If I have a million videos with 10 views each, I get paid off that junk. And so a lot of people they're
know that.
impatient, and the first time they post something and it gets 1, 2 views, and they're just waiting for the ticker to go up. Oh, I got three. I got three. No likes. All right, I like it myself. All right, I got 1 like and 3 views. I'm like, they take that energy and put that into the next video, the next video, next video. I mean, at one point, I was posting 5 videos a day when I was in the dorms, and I spent a lot of time by myself, getting up very early, do my CDCs first thing in the morning,
Yep.
go to
Get
the
the
gym,
step
come
in.
back, make my video, and go to work. That was my schedule almost the entire time I was at Andrews. But now that I get a check from that junk, and now people like I've had people that how do I do YouTube? I'm like, post videos every day. Find a customer of one. You're the customer of one. As long as you
Mhm.
have one category that you would participate in, that's your customer of one. So if you enjoy poetry, you're the customer of one, and obviously just put it out, and
Yeah.
honestly, you should be consistent with it. And so I always encourage people. Like anytime I get people in here that I'm like, you have what talent? You're not putting. Why is it not out of scale? Like, why am I just finding out? Like, I had one guest on here and she writes, and like she doesn't share her writings with no one. I'm like, why the hell you not
I'm
sharing your
not.
stuff? And not everything's meant to be shared, but I mean, there's literally people getting paid to eat Chipotle on YouTube. Like, there are children that are millionaires because of YouTube. I'm like, why are we
Playing
not
video
tapping into
games.
this stuff?
Just
Facts,
playing video games. Watch me play.
facts. Yep. So
Yeah.
it's a lot simpler than a lot of people think. Most youngins, like a lot of children that are on YouTube and blowing up or streamers, they're just fearless and they just go for it and they don't really care about the repercussions. And a lot of them kind of just wake up one day and oh yeah, I'm the top TikToker in the world, Charlie, whatever her name is, multimillionaire, like just because she tried, because she went for it. So I always look at those type of situations. I'm like, all right, what am I pushing the brakes on that I should have started a long time ago? um and a lot,
Mhm.
lot of things like just calling it a podcast, like because no, it's a YouTube video. No, call it a podcast because that's what it is. And
Mhm.
advertise it properly, advertise it wherever you have attention, wherever you have social media presence, and people are going to criticize it, and people are going to probably look in the shadows and not click the link. I'm like, "Oh, so all y'all people saw my story and didn't click on the video, so what? It's not for them. Cool, but keep doing it, keep
Yeah.
doing it." So yeah, that's definitely some truth. Definitely some truth. I did want to bring a little light to the Air Force stuff. That's why most people are watching this channel is the Air Force, the boring Air Force stuff.
Mm.
But that's what they're here for.
That.
What year did you join the Air Force, and what was the stimulus that caused you to do so?
So, man, you're gonna make me date myself.
I,
All right,
I, I had to do it.
it is what it is. So I joined the Air Force in the year 2000.
Okay.
Um, trying to see. So I graduated. Right after I graduated, some legal trouble ensued. We'll
Mm-hmm.
go. All right. Columbus, Georgia is it's not a small city, but it ain't a big city. Um, so I hung out for a little bit. I graduated in June. I think I hung out in July. I ain't gonna say I think. I know it clearly. So we have a big game. It's called the Carver Spencer game. It's like the second biggest thing that's gonna happen in the city. The other one is the Tri City Classic, which is Fort Valley and Albany State, the HBCU Classic that happens in Columbus. But other than that, it's my high school versus Carver High School is the biggest thing. No matter what other school you go to, you go into that game. So I remember going to the game and a couple of things happened. One of the people I graduated with, the game is in August. One of the dudes I graduated with, I remember seeing him and he looked like he was already strung out on crack.
Jesus.
And I just remember like, Jesus, like we just graduated. The second thing I remember is it wasn't the folks who probably left and came back, but I remember going to the game and seeing the folks that I grew up like as a kid idolizing. Like, man, when I grow up, I want to be like him from the neighborhood,
Mm,
and seeing them still posted up doing the same thing.
yeah.
Not that I'm better than anything, but I knew where my life would be headed. I was in the delayed enlistment program. I had signed, like, I knew I wanted to go in the Air Force, but I really just didn't want to go. I actually had a scholarship, but I just didn't want to go to school. And I remember I called my recruiter after that game. I just remember seeing all of that, and I'm like, man, I gotta get this up out of here. So I called my recruiter and said, hey, man, I need to leave within a week, and he got me out. That was it.
Uh,
That was plain and simple. And my other motivation for it was I wanted to be able to legally stunt on folks, man. I'll be honest. I wanted to be
facts.
able to get in a
Facts.
car with some rims, put that tent on there, have brakes in the trunk. I wanted to buy me a
See.
grill,
See.
and yeah, that's it. I'm like, man, I'm gonna go get some legal money because it's a legal thing. My dad wasn't. My dad was in the military, so I won't say my dad wasn't having it. He really, my parents weren't really having it, but my dad always told me like, man, whatever you do what you do.
Mm,
As a man, be ready to face those consequences
facts.
and don't tell on nobody.
Yeah.
It was it. Don't like whatever you do, you did it. If you in the car with five people and you know you did something, you ain't got to. You did it. You ain't got to tell on everybody. So that's all I knew. Like, hey, my dad wasn't like, hey, you won't be doing this. You know what you want to do. And that was it, man. I wanted to get a grill, some rims, and I did not want to be heavy in the streets anymore. That
I
was
feel
it,
you.
man. So I came in.
That's
I
real.
came in.
That's real. Yeah, I've never lived in a hood. I grew up on army bases. My dad was in the army. So
Mhm.
I grew up kind of sheltered from, my own people, especially as it relates to like the lower, lower classes of individuals. They're living in the hood, grow up in ghettos and what have you. I've seen it. I've gone there to get my hair cut. I've gone there to play basketball, get some soul food. But that's usually where it kind of stops. Like where I smell weed in the gym, but I'm out there smoking. I just never got exposed to it like that. But I can definitely see how a lot of people, they're trying to look of, all right, I don't want to go to college. I don't have the money for college, but how do I make something of myself, with the skills I currently have? And of course, the Air Force is one of the great opportunities. And that, again, not a lot of people get access to because most people, the only option is the Army or the Marines or the Navy. The Air
Mhm.
Force is highly competitive. A lot of people try and get in. So it's not something that you should take lightly, but a lot of opportunities are available to people. And of course, you get the instant stability. Like, all right, I have full paid benefits. I have paid
Yeah.
leave. Like paid leave is not something that you just get entry level. Like you got to work sometimes 6 months to a year to get that, and you come in accruing leave ASAP in basic training. Like you're already getting that junk. So
2.5
a lot of people
days.
facts, facts. So I mean, it's definitely a thing. To, I mean, I came in. I'm like, bro, I'm trying to get this car, bro. I'm trying to level up ASAP. Like, oh, I'm trying to be different. Um, so yeah, it's definitely a thing. Definitely a thing. And I mean, we're blessed to be able to take advantage of it. So,
Yes,
um,
indeed.
yeah, in your 21 years, how have you observed the Air Force evolve? I would imagine basic training was different than base training of today, obviously in light of COVID. Um, but I would imagine you've seen a lot of the. I mean, you've definitely seen the BDUs. I'm not even sure what came before BDUs, but like the uniforms evolving, the restrictions, the regulations evolving. Well, what would you say is the biggest standout as far as the evolution of the Air Force?
Mm, more inclusive.
Okay.
Uh, a lot of people say the Air Force has gotten softer. Uh, I don't know if I want to call it soft.
Hmm.
I think we're moving towards getting it right. Things that I came in. So like you mentioned basic training. What was basic training like for me? Um, and shout out to Chief Master Sergeant Easton. He's
Hmm.
a command chief over USAFE AFRICOM, or he was. But that was my TI, right? When I came in, you could still hat check people. A lot of people don't even know what that is, but the TIs, they got their
Mm.
campaign on. They could put that tip into your forehead. We used to
Lord,
call it hat checking. Like when they talk to you, they drop it down on your forehead and tell you get your mind right.
Lord.
No way you can do that now,
Right.
right? I remember at one point being like, man, they got stress cards in basic. Like, man, you get a time.
Mm-mm.
They have that, right?
Yeah.
We had wall to wall counseling back then. You mess up, you might not get an LOC or LOR.
Mm.
You might need to have a little tops off conversation with somebody in the back. There might be three or four. Your master sergeant might call in a couple of folks a couple of other
Mm.
NCOs, you're a young airman thinking can't nobody hold you. Yeah,
Facts.
man, let's brawl that thing out. It was a mutual respect, right?
Mm.
Because after, if we all come in as airmen, we think like, man, can't nobody hold us. I can
Right.
beat anybody. My supervisor don't. He's saying that because I beat him up on the outside. Let's go in this back room real quick. Let's talk
Right.
about it.
Throw some
Right? And
hands
then
real
you
quick.
see, right, it's gonna work one or two ways. Either you're gonna find out that your supervisor for real,
Right.
or maybe I need to listen next time they speak. Or your
Mm.
supervisor, you still gonna listen, but you're gonna respect your supervisor. Like, man, he stood up in there with me. And your
Yeah.
supervisor gonna realize, like, all right, you know what? Now, I say that it was cool, but it wasn't the right way,
Yeah.
right? Because we don't think about what that does for folks
Mm.
over the course of time. Um, at checking people in basic training, like, no, man, because you don't know what I grew up with. So you doing that might just be intensifying the PTSD I might have had growing up, right? So now that I'm still
Yeah.
not a functioning human being, um, we weren't taught to articulate as much. And for that, we weren't pushing the Air Force forward, right? Because
Mm.
we were taught we're going to beat it into you and then you're going to listen and then you're going to get it done. Now we're all about innovation. And I can appreciate it. A lot of the people, especially in the Air Force, we got people coming in with bachelor's, master's
Mm.
degrees, right? We had a guy that was in the radiology department. He had a PhD. He was a
Jesus.
full doctor in another country. He was just waiting for his stuff to transfer. What I look like, and what I look like telling him, "Hey man, shut up and color." I
Right.
got a whole PhD. What I'm telling you, and you
Right.
was a whole doctor. These are the things that we don't think about, right? So like, we ain't getting softer, we're getting smarter.
Mm.
Um, the standards as far as hair, uh, grooming standards, we'll say,
Mm.
a lot of people call it ridiculousness, but like beards, right? I
Mm.
think I just posted about this the other day, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
I saw
still a
it.
stigma of senior NCOs having a beard. I got my stubble in right now. And I've actually had somebody say, like, hey, getting a little scruffy. And I'm like, hey man, I got a shaving waiver. Um, but look how many people, if you see a lot of retired folks, faces just messed up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you had to shave. I know a lot of females that complain about the hair loss. So you see some females, it look like they got braids, but that braid is hanging on to dear life because they
Right.
didn't spend years of pulling that thing so tight.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm appreciative of some of the standards that now that I'm not gonna be too Air Forcey. Like some stuff I'm like, I do
Mm.
it, but like walking with your hands in your pockets to me is
Yeah.
still I'm still trying to wrap my arms around it. But I tell you one thing that I do. because I think it's important for me to do is I walk around with my hands in my pockets sometimes
Mm,
because one, I have to get used to the idea of doing it. And then if I never do it or I like chastise people for doing it, even though they
yeah.
can, you're gonna get a generation of folks be like, oh, I can't really put my hands in my pocket. So yeah, I'm just happy that we're taking more strides, man, and we're taking more information from folks at a younger level because we all say it. I am not the smartest person in the room by a long shot. I mean, I got a lot of my airmen are like, "Oh yeah, I'm just finishing up my master's," and I'm like, "You know, I got UCAF, right?" Like,
That see.
so I have the experience of leading, but probably not the knowledge that they have to
Hmm.
push us into the next generation. So I'll honestly say sometimes my job has gotten a lot easier because I don't
Hmm.
have to come up with the ideas and I don't have to direct a lot of orders. There's some stuff that I still have to do because I have that military knowledge, but for the most part, man, I talk to my folks and I say, hey, what do you want to do?
Mm,
And let's try that. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure out some ways to make it work, or we'll rewash a different idea and make that one better. But I don't know. Gone is the day where you look to your senior enlisted to come out with the plan and to make the plan happen. And we've transitioned to where you got your youngest airman. You walk into a room and you say, hey, man, we got a problem. And how are we going to fix it? How do you want to fix it?
mm,
And they get it done. We're a smarter force. And maybe we're not as military as all the other branches would like to be. But I don't feel hesitant to say we're the smartest. Um,
facts.
so what that um, we allow, different color nails or other
Hmm.
branches. I don't even know if women can wear earrings, right? But for ours,
Yeah.
like, man, go ahead, get a diamond stud a little bit bigger. Go ahead,
Mm,
get your nail color a different color. Or your hair, men and women. You want it bleach blonde on top, do what you do. If
hmm.
that's going to make you feel better about yourself, which is going to make you feel more empowered at work, then let's get it done.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, I'm with it. I struggle. I really do. I'm not going front and be like, man, everything. I'm like, oh yeah, it's great
Mm,
because it's what I'm used to for so long that now the changes come. Some stuff I'm like, oh man, that's dope. But some stuff I'm still
yeah.
like, uh, inside,
Yeah.
inside, right? But whatever my folks want to do, if that's what they want to do, man, and that's where the Air Force is moving to make us better, man. We're not softer, we're not nothing. I think we're just finding different ways to be greater.
Different, I think is the right word for it. It's kind of like the NBA. Like they say the NBA is softer now. I'm like, no, the NBA is different now. And of course, physically speaking, it may have been more physical, in the 80s, 90s, cool, but it's just different. And of course, a lot of people struggle with the evolution of something or the innovation. Um,
Yes.
I I struggle with the speed of innovation with the Air Force. This partly why I was getting out. I'm like, bro, I saw a fax machine, and like people were using it. I'm like, why are we using fax machines? Why are we using paper? Why are we using pencils? When we leave work, we don't touch paper. In most cases, like even cash is kind of outdated. Most people grab their phone,
Yeah.
put it next to a scanner, or they use a debit card or a credit card or Venmo or Cash App. In most cases, we don't use paper. We don't use pencils once we leave ancient environments. And so, of course, there's a level of adaptation that a lot of people struggle with. Even me, like I've been diagnosed with like attachment disorder or adjustment disorders, where I'm like, it seems like you're taking quite a while to adjust. I'm like, it's just me, but I think a lot of even people that have been in longer have maybe some issues with how things are changing. And of course, there's gonna be opinions on either side as far as is it better or worse. But I feel like if you stay the same, you're gonna lose it either way. Um, so there
Yes.
should be a level of innovation that everyone should be pursuing. So that's definitely a thing. On a different note, what's your most controversial opinion that isn't of a political nature?
Most controversial opinion that isn't of a political nature.
Yeah.
Mm, that is a good question. LeBron James is the greatest player of all time.
You're on the right podcast with the right person at the right time because if nothing else is accomplished today, this will be an intervention for you. to help you arrive at the correct answer, which is actually Kobe. Um, but it's definitely unfortunate that somebody, I'm not sure who lied to you or who deceived you. Um, but apparently you drank the Kool-Aid. What makes you think that LeBron is the GOAT?
Um, so there's several reasons, right? The numbers, let's just go there. Um, but the longevity, and maybe it's more of an
Mhm.
appreciation, right?
Yeah.
Um, and when I speak about greatness, like look at some of the greatest that we talk about,
Mhm.
right? Like, so for me, it's not even. I think basketball is the one area where it is a team sport where we make it solely about something that makes it opinion based on greatness.
Mhm.
But it probably ain't even makes sense. But I'll say this. When we look at greatness, we look at all around person. So like Muhammad Ali, greatest boxer to ever live,
Mhm.
but he ain't had the best record,
Right.
right? But what made him great? His showmanship, his wins, him being a champion, and then that last thing was him being so outspoken,
Yeah.
right? Fighting for people. When I look at LeBron James, he's that, right? He's heavy in the
Mhm.
community, right? Like basketball aside, heavy in the community. Um, not only in his hometown, right? So like that's one thing you don't really see is people going back to their hometown. Not that it has to be on display, but people going back to their hometown and like he's from Akron, Ohio, which is what
Right.
they basically call like the garbage dump of Ohio. Right?
Right.
Heard people like from Akron, like man, this is what it is, and I'm like,
Mhm.
geez. So to know that he goes back there and he's uplifting people, then he put all his friends on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not in the way that most people want to be put on, but he put them in different places in multiple different venues to where um his name Rich is like one of the top
Mhm.
agents,
Yeah.
right? Then he got they producing shows. He's just
Mhm.
doing so much. Now when we talk about on the court, everybody talks about the pressure that he had from high school to now, right?
Yeah.
He's lived up to it. The last person we saw come out of high school with that much hype that lived up to the hype was Kevin Garnett,
Mhm.
right? Anybody else? I'm from Georgia, love Kwame Brown. As
Yeah.
far as I ain't gonna say he's a scrub or he ain't, because I could never make it in the NBA. So that's funny to
Mhm.
me that a bunch of folks be like, "Oh man, he can't play." It's like, bro, he made it one way or another. He
I mean,
made
he
it.
played like what 8, 11 years or something. Like he had a
Yeah.
career. Like he did his thing.
So yeah, but LeBron came in with hype and he sustained it. Automatic
Yeah.
change for the Cavaliers, right? Um,
Mhm.
what people don't remember is that I think it was Ricky Davis was playing there with them.
Mhm.
And it was like, man, I ain't finna let this kid come out shine me. Demanded a trade. I think he ended up going to Boston. And they had who did they have? They had somebody else that was playing for Cleveland because they had two stars. They were just garbage.
Darius Miles, I think.
There we go. It was Darius Miles.
Yeah.
Everybody, nobody wanted to play with him because they didn't want to be out. Like they didn't want him to shine. Blah blah blah.
Mhm.
He turned the Cavs around. Then he made people household names that we don't really
Yeah.
know, right? Again, not saying these folks are bums or anything like that, but nobody knew Anderson Varejao.
Right.
Nobody knew Mo Williams,
Yeah. Yeah. Gauskas.
right?
Yeah.
Ilgauskas, and he was actually a solid center. At one point, we was looking back like, man, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, man, you know what I'm saying? Top 5 center
Yeah.
in the league right now.
Mhm.
Tristan Thompson got paid big money.
Just the
Looked good
rebound.
because, yeah, right? So he sustained it. Then we talk about like, he's just now getting hurt. How many times in his career you've been like, man, LeBron hurt again? No,
Yeah.
he
Doesn't
led the
happen.
league in minutes for I don't know how many, and then
Mhm.
he's a person that can score and take over a game that was assist minded, and he
Mhm.
plays in every position. Kobe, awesome, killer on the court, termination, but um, and I didn't grow up a big Kobe fan. I've learned an
Mm,
appreciation for him, you know, over the years. Before he
yeah.
passed, like, I just remember, like, I wasn't like a big Kobe fan, but I knew he was great. And then the more and more you like learn about him and watching more documentaries, and it's just, unfortunate that he passed. But to
Mm,
realize like his mindset and his work ethic and stuff like that, his drive, super, super dope. I got
yeah.
him up there. But the same stuff, like, man, Kobe practiced and he took care of his body, and it's like LeBron does too.
Yeah.
Look, LeBron had to team up with people. But if you look at the teams that he was going up against, everybody was teaming up with folks. And he
Yeah.
wasn't the first to do it. There was the big
Facts.
three in Boston.
Yeah.
Um, we're not going to talk about how the Bulls went out and had to go get Rodman and had to go
Yeah.
get Ron Harper, who was a top guard at the time, which nobody wants to talk
Mhm.
about. He had Pippen. He had a great team they built around him. But when people build
Yeah.
around LeBron, it's like, oh. Anyways, points wise, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks, basketball IQ, work ethic, playing all positions. It's LeBron James, man. How could anybody be better? I'm listening.
So, objectively speaking, I don't like LeBron. LeBron to me is kind of like if I was on a date or like after the day I brought old girl home. We sit on the couch and we just we being innocent, we watching TV, we ain't doing nothing. But I about to move, I make the move, put my arm around her, whatever. And then little brother, little sister runs in the room and says, "Can I watch too?" And I'm like, "Bro, what are
What
you
are you doing?
doing, bro? Like, I'm trying to handle some business here. Like, what are you doing?" LeBron, it's kind of like, first of all, I've been a Lakers fan as long as I can remember. My dad's from LA, my mom's from California. Like, my whole family lives in California. So it's been Kobe. It's been Kobe. That's how like I remember 2000, was it 2000 and 2001 or no 2009 or 2010 whenever they won.
Mhm.
I've just been obsessed with Kobe, and of course, when he passed, like that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I still haven't truly processed that, but in my heart of hearts, and when I think rationally, I know Kobe's not the goat. I know he doesn't have the numbers, he doesn't have the longevity, he doesn't have the efficiency. And let's say we did give Kobe certain categories, like he was a killer and he had the work ethic and he had the resume, he had the
Mhm.
stereotypes or like the myths of Kobe. LeBron, like they say he's not a scorer, but he averaged the same amount of points for his career as Kevin Durant, who said he's a scorer, but he's more efficient than Durant. And then, of course, he has the rebounds, the assists. And he's going to break Kareem's record. He
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
have the MVPs. He doesn't have the Finals MVPs like Jordan. He doesn't have his record in the finals is dusty compared to Jordan, or Kareem, because Kareem is slept on. Bill Russell, I mean, he got 11 rings, bro.
Yeah.
Wilt Chamberlain is so disrespected. Like, oh no, he played in a different era. He still played in the same league as y'all, bro, and he
He
slept
did.
on. Tim Duncan is overlooked. So there's a lot of snubs as relates to the GOAT argument, but it's getting harder and harder to defend Jordan against LeBron. Because Kobe,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's an emotional argument I make for Kobe every time. It's always an emotional argument because there's no numbers to back it up outside of the 5 rings he has over LeBron. If LeBron get one more, they be tied. There ain't gonna be much left to argue for. Jordan
Yeah.
just has that 6 rings, 6 MVPs that protects him against LeBron, but he really doesn't have anything else outside of maybe shoots free throws better because LeBron shoots threes better at a high percentage. He shoots from the field at a higher percentage, and he's going to average more. I don't think he averages more points for his career, but he's probably going to win the scoring title this year. He's adding to his resume every single day, and because he's playing so
Yeah.
long, it's he's just going to break all the records. Like there's not. I mean, maybe the assist might be the only one safe. John Stockton has that one safely out of reach, but he's still going to be like top 5 in assists. So
Yeah.
he's a different animal that we've never seen. Like Mayweather was 50-0, but he still lost in the Olympics. Like people forget about that L he took in the Olympics, and maybe it was controversial, but he lost. But
Mm,
people don't want to count that. So I'm like, are people don't want to count Jordan's wizard years or Kobe's last couple years where
no,
he was treading water. I'm like, everybody like LeBron in 2011 when he had that dusty against the Mavericks. He disappeared. Magic Johnson in 86. Everybody had they dusty, times where Lakers didn't make the
they did.
playoffs. And LeBron, might not make the playoffs this year. Russ was stinging things up in AD constantly in street clothes. It's always a thing. But I think you might be right. Objectively, like if I was to be objective and rational and take all my emotions out of it, I think LeBron is making the strongest case possible. Um, and it's still hard to put him over Kareem. It's still hard to put him over Magic Johnson. Um, it's hard to put him over Jordan, but he's making a great argument. He's definitely top three. Um,
Yeah.
but it's hard. It's hard to put him number one, mainly because you have to still factor in the emotions. Like you can't remove the emotions completely. You factor it in, and so it's prioritized properly. I give him number three, number four, something like that.
So I'm from Georgia. I'm Georgia through and through. So I was a Dominique Wilkins fan. So I rock Jordans, but I've been upset since they gave Jordan that slam dunk competition in Chicago that we all know
Mm,
that Dominique won.
see,
Right? Everybody does the 6-0 for Jordan, but they don't talk about his playoff record previously.
yeah,
Um, and even the emotional part of it, right? Like the emotions or the other factors. You talk to most people, they're like, "Oh yeah, he wanted us to win, and we got 6 championships," but all his teammates hate him,
true.
right? Anybody that's played with LeBron, they'll all tell you like, "Oh man, yeah, he did this, he made," and not saying that Jordan didn't make people better. His competitiveness made him unbearable. But when you're winning, right?
Yeah,
We all know that. Like we play sports. When you're winning, we can me and you can hate each other, but man,
right.
we win.
Like Belichick
I'm
and
blocking
Brady.
for you and you got 5 touchdowns. I don't care.
Yep,
We good.
facts.
But hey, when we done, it's like, man, you start looking back at the years, like, I
Mm,
actually really didn't like that dude. And he wasn't a
right.
good person. And I think that's what we're starting to see more of from Jordan. And yeah, the 6-0, and I think LeBron has gotten cheated. I don't mean like I don't say that like in a way, but defensive player of the year when they gave it to who they gave it to Mark Gasol or I think they gave it to Mark Gasol that year,
Mm.
who was on the second on an all defensive team, second team,
Was it
right?
Memphis back then?
Yeah, he wasn't even on
Okay.
the first team, right? So he was on second team,
Mm,
and they gave it to him in the year that LeBron won MVP. He should have won Defensive Player of the Year, but I feel like he wasn't given it because they're like, if he does that, then him and Jordan will be. And I think a
mm,
lot of stuff has been like, oh, we can't do this because of Jordan.
yeah.
The year
The
Derrick
narrative.
Rose won MVP,
Yeah.
like Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose ain't he? Come on now, he wasn't MVP that year.
Okay. Yeah. That's disrespectful. That's cap. Derek.
Over
We can't
LeBron.
do that.
I ain't say he wasn't great, but over LeBron that year,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
whew, they got smoked in the playoffs.
D Rose also falls in that emotional category. Like, what's his name? Not Ben Gordon. Um, the guy that played at Portland.
Are you talking about before that?
Yeah, before
You
Damian.
talking about Roy?
Yeah, Brandon Roy. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have an emotional category for players that like they should have won more than they did. Um, but it's just like Allen Iverson doesn't have a ring. Like it's just there's certain like first of all you have your competitors that you got to go through. Depending on your conference, it might be easy that year. It might be you might be having a struggle just to make it out of the first round. It's like Chris Paul, and it kind of ties in with what you said as far as people not liking Jordan. The reason why people had to respect Jordan is because he won. A lot of people
Mm,
didn't like Kobe. Like Kobe got in a lot of spats back and forth, but Kevin Garnett, like they'll go back and forth. But there was respect there because people won. Like Kevin Garnett got his ring, Kobe got his rings, Jordan got his rings. Chris Paul doesn't have any rings, but he has the same mouth as a Jordan, as a Kobe, as a Garnett. He's abrasive as hell. LeBron is one of the nice guys. He works out with everybody. He plays with everybody. He gets a lot of people
mhm.
paid that have no business getting paid. He can get me a contract, put me in the corner, spot up for 2 threes a game. He'll
Just
get
two.
me paid.
All you need.
LeBron got a lot of people the bag. Chris Paul, he'll drag a dusty team to the playoffs, the 7 seed, 8 seed, whatever, play in, but they will never go. He has the same resume as Westbrook, minus the MVP, minus the triple doubles. But
Yep.
people will argue that Chris Paul is better. I'm like, I don't see it. It's not in the numbers. And they say,
Thank you.
what's the eye test? He's a floor general. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of the game has become subjective because if you just look strictly at the numbers, Wilt's going to win everything. Like Bill
Oh
Russell's
yeah.
going to win everything. Kareem, Jordan are probably going to dominate, and of course LeBron will dominate in a lot of categories too. So it can't be strictly numbers. MVP is not really a numbers award; it's more of a narrative award of like who should win? Of course, there's PER to look at that. Yeah, the GOAT debate seems to be endless, mainly because the people that are everybody's entrenched and no one's going to budge on theirs. And the only you can really do is like if LeBron won like 3 championships in a row with Russ, and after struggling all season long, he dragged Russ and AD to a championship. Like, yeah, how do you not give it to him? Like he's doing too much. So I don't know. It seems endless. I don't think it'll ever be a settled thing. Like everybody agrees Steph Curry is the best shooter in NBA history. It's not even close. Nobody debates it.
That's
Nobody's
not
losing sleep over it.
that's
Yeah.
not close. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but as far as the GOAT debate, that will always be something that if you try to choose numbers, it's not gonna be LeBron or Jordan. But if you include numbers and emotion, it could be either one, or it could be Kobe, or it could be Tim Duncan or Kareem. So it seems to be endless, but yeah, we'll have to table that for now. Just a little bit of Air
Mm.
Force stuff. So talk about your job. You say you work. Your first job was in the pharmacy, but yeah, talk about working in the pharmacy and what that truly entails.
Um, so it's not just pills in the bottle, man. I'm gonna tell people that. I like to let folks know that. So pharmacy, one, I did come in guaranteed pharmacy. I got to pick my job,
Okay.
and I got to keep my job, even though I came in earlier than I was expected.
Hmm.
Pharmacy. Wow. So pharmacy has to be like one of the most underappreciated jobs, the most underappreciated job in the hospital. It's one of the only positions, or only the one of the only stops in the in the hospital where you don't get to involve yourself as a patient, right? Like you kind of check in, and we tell you to
Mhm.
come back in whatever specified amount of time, and then you're out, right? And then from there, it just feels like you're just waiting. What's going on behind the scenes? So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Um, a lot of things have to deal with just saving your life. What a lot of people don't
Mhm.
know is our job is to make sure that you are getting the correct dose for your medication at the right duration, and making sure that we're not getting you too much. And it's not to put fear like, oh, the docs don't know what they're doing. Man, these doctors are killing it. But their job is to diagnose you and make sure you're getting the right medication and regimen. But we're looking at all the other stuff. Hey, you don't see that this person got X amount of drugs at the ER 2 weeks ago that they're still taking,
Mhm.
that is going to interact with what you're taking now. Um, Sometimes we get a prescription, the doctor didn't put any directions on there. And for anybody dealing with providers, you know how hard it is to get in touch with a doctor to go through the system.
Right.
So when people are waiting and they're like, why is it taking so long? I see my prescription right there. And it's like,
Mhm.
we've been trying to call your doctor for 2 hours to let him know that he didn't put no directions on here. That's
Mhm.
why your prescription ain't ready. Or heck, sometimes we're trying to get in touch with the patient because we're like, hey, shows you have an allergic reaction to this. Even though the doc didn't give you this drug, it's in the same drug class as this. And I'm trying
Mhm.
to make sure that you don't have an allergy attack and don't realize, what's going on. Um, but that's what it is, man. It's really making sure that we're providing the right medication to the right people. We want to do it in a fast manner, but reality is it needs to be done in a safe manner,
Mhm.
because we deal in decimals. So if I'm
Okay.
0.02 milligrams off, you know, uh, you get close to like hurting people's children, hurting
Yeah.
people's spouses, family members, right? All because if you're not paying attention to that decimal. Um, Now, is it that hard every single time? No, right? Just like with any job, in finance, you a decimal off, you might have got somebody a couple
Yeah.
more dollars than they needed to have, and you got to answer for
Right.
that, right?
Yeah.
So you pay attention to the numbers, but when you get to a while, like you're moving and grooving, but that's what it is. Making sure that we get people. It's customer service based, taking care of folks. Um, the biggest part of our job is managing expectations and handling attitudes and trying to get people out the door with a smile, which is hard to do in a clinic where you're sick and you've been bounced around between waiting 15 to 30 minutes just to be seen by your doctor for 5 minutes, who tells you to go to lab where you wait for 30 minutes to get poked and prodded, and then they send radiology to wait, and then you get this x-ray, and then you go to pharmacy, and by that time you're tired, you're probably hungry. You don't feel like you've really been taken care of because you spent a limited amount of time talking to your provider, and you get this medication, and we're the last stop. And we have to talk to you, right? I have to ask, do you have any questions about your medication, or did the doctor explain all of that? And sometimes that triggers something, right? Like, hey, if ain't nobody really talked to you as a patient that whole day, and then I'm like, hey, did anybody talk to you about your medication? Do you have any questions? That's like, bing, now I get to go off.
Right.
And sometimes, man, it's our job to eat that bowl of crap and take a little bit more attitude than you normally would, because you got to understand that it's not about the patient being frustrated with you. It's about them just being frustrated or not feeling good or being scared.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure that you, one, walk away feeling taken care of, like somebody took care of you, somebody took the time to take care of you, making sure you got the right stuff, make sure you understand how to take it, and then ensuring you that if you need anything or you have any questions, let me know. And hopefully you walk away from there and you say, I'm a little bit, I'm okay. Not always the case. Some people just need to yell at you and they get in their car and they drive off. They don't think nothing else about it. Um, but my hope is that whenever a person leaves the pharmacy, like no matter what the whole clinic experience is, if it was a great one, I hope we left it intact. And if it wasn't a good one, I hope we salvaged it to get you out, and that you and your family or whomever it was that needed to get treated is secure. That's pharmacy, man, in a nutshell. Yeah.
One more question about pharmacy, and then we're going to play a game, and then we'll end it there. What would you say the average day looks like for a brand new airman getting to their first base, fresh out of tech school, probably has limited knowledge, probably, all the information went in one ear, out the other. How does a brand new airman's day look like when they first get to the pharmacy of Med Group?
Man, first day in the pharmacy is going to be, make sure you got your comfy shoes on. You're going to be standing up 8 hours. Just let you know you're standing up 8 hours. That first day, you're not even talking to a patient. To be honest, you don't even have the wits about you to do so. So you're going to do nothing but fill prescriptions, and that is literally making sure that whatever you're putting in the bottle is the right thing, and you do that repetitively. That's what you're going to do all day. And in between that, it's probably going to be somebody asking you random questions, just like, I don't want to say it's like basic training, but it's a grind, right? Especially if we're busy, and you're going to get the random person like, oh, you're feeling that? Tell me what that drug is for. Now you got to sit and think, okay, what am I? And it's like, okay, so they're getting this and this. What do you think that patient has? What drugs shouldn't they take? And this is just randomly as you're feeling. Because even though it went in one out the other, you got to get used to knowing this stuff, because what's going to happen is as you start to see that more and more, when you see things that don't look right, you have to identify it as a technician before it gets to the pharmacist. And all of our pharmacists are actually doctors. Also, they actually have a PharmD. So before it gets to them, like, we have to be kind of on their knowledge base. So before it gets to them, everything should be good to go. But that's your day. You're going to be standing up, you're going to be walking around, and you're going to be filling prescriptions all day until you master that. Making sure that you're getting the right pills into also the right size bottle. You ever went to the pharmacy, you get this big bottle and it's like 5 pills in there. You're like, man, why? I got to carry this around, right? Like, put it in a baggie. We can't put it in baggies, but put it in something smaller. And it's like, why'd you put that in there? People don't know, right? Like, we actually get taught. It's called pharmacy elegance. It's an actual thing. Like, you should be putting the right size stuff. The label should be on there the right way. There's laws that say what kind of cap has to go on top of that bottle. Like, unless it's specified, you have to have a child resistant cap. So if you put something in a non-child resistant, that's, you're not allowed to do that without authorization. Like, there's small things that people are like, oh, you're just doing this. No, if that label doesn't read right, it's called mislabeling, and that's punishable. You can't just do that. So yeah. So you just learning that as it, and then you probably do that for a little while before you even get access to the computer to be able to type in prescriptions, let alone talk to a patient about do they have any questions about their medication. Like, nah, you got to work your way up to
Right.
that.
Got you. I'm going to ask you a question, and you have to answer it in a single sentence, or whatever comes to mind, or whatever you think is most relevant. First question: what's something that you want airmen to know about senior NCOs?
Not all of us are bad, and we're here to help.
Got you. What would be your advice to brand new NCOs?
Stop trying to be everybody's friend. You don't get paid for it. It's not on your LES, BAH, BAS. There's no spot on there that says friendship. So just remember, teach people and then be their friend. They'll appreciate you more for the stuff they learn from you and not the beers that you had.
Gotcha. That's good advice. What's something you do every day with no exceptions? Doesn't have to be every single day, but in most days, what's something that simply that you would say occurs most often?
I speak to everybody in my section at work.
Okay.
First thing in the morning, I make sure I try and speak to, I say I try to speak to everybody that works with me just to say hi. I think that starting that day off just saying, hey, how you doing?
Mm,
It changes me.
that's real. That's real. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see youngins in the Air Force making?
The biggest mistake I see people in the Air Force making is trying to get promoted without knowledge.
Yeah.
That's the biggest mistake that I see. Everybody wants to be like make rank the first go round, but they don't
Mm.
understand that with that rank, there's a responsibility that comes with it, not just a paycheck.
I remember in tech school, the first time I heard that somebody made, I think they paraded them in tech school. Like first day we had all those briefings, and they
Mhm.
said this guy made, he made NCO, he made staff in 3 years, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. It sounds efficient as hell. Like take the test once, pass it. And by doing so, I made staff in 3 years. But being a supervisor so early, not only kind of like how you mentioned, you go around and talk to everyone in your section. I don't have that personality trait. And it's not so much that I have to have that organically, but it's also something that you have to choose to do. It
Mhm.
requires energy. And so it's also comes from your knowledge and your experience in leadership of realizing the value of talking to people and speaking and kind of breaking the touch barrier and breaking the ice with everyone in your section, especially as a senior NCO where you have to be seen as approachable. And that's been one of my biggest struggles, especially I got two troops, and like one of them was kind of shy and off like she didn't do a lot of talking at all. Like she was just by herself, but she was competent. She did her job. And then the other youngin, he was on 10. He was from Houston. He talkative. He's extrovert, and
Yep.
so of course I little connected with him a little bit more, but it was still a struggle in terms of I just didn't have the experience of like I wasn't a senior airman that long, and so I didn't have a lot of experience as it relates to not the job itself, but interacting with people. Because even from the beginning in basic training, I wasn't good at teamwork, and I'm still not good at teamwork. Um, I don't
Mm.
share well. When I went to not ALS, but 7 level, and just cringing, just waiting for the second one to say, "All right, everybody team up," and I'm like, why do we have to team up? Just give me the assignment. But that's always been my biggest struggle. ALS too. Like that's been my biggest struggle is teaming up and relying on other people and trusting them to do their part. And all right, you do this part, I do this part, and then we'll show up the day of and put it together. I'm like, I don't trust y'all like that. Like just show up with my grade and like, but that's always been one of my weaknesses. So I think that's a very vital point of yes, the option is there to promote because you got to pass a test. And some people are not studying, some people are showing up unprepared. They show up the day of, swipe the sleep out the eye and they go. And some people study it. So of
Yeah.
course, that might increase your chance of promotion and what have you. Your EPR might be beautiful. You got all the volunteer stuff and you got the high flying bullets and it must promote all that. But often there's also a level of humanity and a level of experience as relates to social interactions that you need, that I didn't have when I made staff. And so I think that's a very important point. To yes, the rank is there, and yes, you're able to promote and make rank. But it's why I always tell people like sign the 4-year contract, because the 6-year, yeah, you probably promote quicker. You're gonna have the opportunity to promote a lot quicker on a 6-year
Yeah, you
contract
will.
because you're gonna come in as E3. But just because you're making more money, just because you're able to promote quicker, doesn't mean you'll be ready for those promotions, and it might just add extra stress to your plate to where now it's diminishing returns. You didn't really gain anything outside of a couple extra dollars that you're gonna spend anyway, and yeah, it's diminishing returns at the end of the day. So I think that's a very important point. So I'm glad you shed light on that. And lastly, one last question to end, and it's kind of vague and doesn't really apply to anything we've talked about today. But
Okay.
knowing what you know now, how old are you?
I had to think about it. 39.
At 39 years old, knowing what 21 years in the Air Force, with all your experience, all your experiences, what do you fear? What are you afraid of? And you can answer in the philosophical sense as far as what you see in society, or what you see in the Air Force, or what you see globally, or emotionally. What do you fear?
What do I fear? I fear failure in my family's eyes. That's my biggest fear. I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of things that I knew I wasn't good at. I'm not going to say that I wasn't good at. I wasn't great at. Um, this military thing, I'm great at. Not only
Mhm.
great, I don't equate greatness to the rank achieved. I equate greatness to lives affected. Right?
Mhm.
I'm good at what I do. I fear that one day I won't make my family proud. I'm excited at the fact that my parents are like, "Oh yeah, my son," and they brag on you, right? Like it's a small thing.
Mhm.
Like parents brag on their kids, but like there's some parents who can't brag on their kids, right?
Yeah.
Um, I got to wear my uniform, right? I got to go visit my son. He was down in tech school, and
Mhm.
he was proud. Like, man, yeah, my dad and everybody, like his friends and stuff, you know. And I'm a
Mhm.
senior NCO, so his friends were all
Right.
like stoked, like, "Oh God, it's
Yeah.
your dad!" And
Yeah.
I think at one point I end up changing. I end up changing my clothes, and I was just in regular clothes, and they're like, "Oh my God, your dad's dressed like." And my son, you see my son, like, yes, my dad, right?
Yeah. You
Um,
got
happy
J's
for my
on.
yeah, right. Like they were
Yeah.
excited, like that ain't your dad for real. That's your brother. I'm like, oh, okay, I am,
See.
but
Yeah.
I'm happy when my sons see me, or my daughters see me, and they're happy to see me, or somebody says that's your dad. And they're like, yes, that's my dad.
Mhm.
Um, I'm fearful of the day, and I pray that it never comes. That they're not excited about that. And they're not proud
No.
of that. Dame Dash said, man, he said the difference between me and others is they hustle for their first name, and I hustle for my last name.
Yeah.
Um, I have a powerful last name
Mhm.
in King. I want people to be like, man, there goes King. And I want people to say that about my children. I don't want
Yeah.
people to be like, oh, there goes King, right? There's a difference in tones. Same words,
Mhm.
the difference in tone. And I want that to mean something. Like I truly do. And I want when people know, like, oh man, that's your dad, and they expect greatness and they see greatness in the people around me because of my affiliation. Um,
Yeah.
and and that's what it is. I fear that. I fear not being able to put people in a position to win. Um, I like that people. I don't know. It kind of sounds narcissistic, but I like that people hear my name and say like, "Oh man, I know whatever he's putting out. I know it's good."
Yeah.
Right? And the folks that I mentor and stuff like that, like, "Oh man, I was somewhere and somebody was talking about you," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's my mentor," and they
Mhm.
automatically put me in the door. And I like
Yeah.
that I'm afforded that opportunity to not just do great things for myself, but for the people around me. And again, like I said earlier, taking care of people means a lot to me. So being able to do those things, um, I'm fearful of the day that I can't.
Since you were vulnerable, I'll answer the question briefly and then we'll end it there. My current fear. So ultimately, my fear is regret. The one word answer, the answers for me
Mhm.
is regret. But currently, my one fear, and it's something that I've kind of made my peace with, but I'm also kind of one foot in, one foot out, is leaving the Air Force. Because I see careers like yours. I'm like, all right, he's at 21 years, and he found a way to make it work, to get some fulfillment from it, to get some enjoyment from it. I'm at 6. What am I leaving behind that I have yet to figure out yet? Um, and I'm settled in my decision making as far as getting out. Now I'm still one foot out as far as the reserves and the guard. As those are still
Mhm.
options. Um, but there's a part of me that still wonders, like, all right, if I'm dealing with anxiety in the Air Force and I leave the Air Force, what happens if I still have that same anxiety, except I'm not in the Air Force now and I have less stability than I had when I was in? It's something that I think about, and it's why I'm just out here grinding. I'm just working. Um, but it's something I think about, and it's obviously what I always tell people is, like, it's not something you rush towards. Like, you don't feel emotion and then just start acting on it. Like, you should consider your mentors and seek wisdom and mentorship and what have you. But yeah, it's something that I think about, and it's also something like, as you were talking, I thought about my parents and, like, have I been showing them the energy that you fear losing? Like, does my dad think that he's
Yeah.
a failure because we don't talk that often? I don't want him to think that, because I don't have my beef with any of my parents. It's just we don't talk as often. But it's something I don't want them to ever have that feeling that you just expressed. So um, I do appreciate you sharing, because it was convicting in the sense that, you know, fathers and mothers, they have feelings too, and just because I feel a certain way towards them, and I might have some unforgiveness in my heart about certain things like divorce, or, you know, separation or distance, or things like that. It's definitely something to think about as far as how they experience me. It's not just me experiencing them. How do they experience me as their son, their older son at that? So yeah, I definitely appreciate your time. We're coming up on 2 hours. I definitely appreciate coming on and giving your insight, your wisdom to the people. Any last thoughts for the people before we end it there?
Yes, I really do. And my last thoughts are about you. I want to say that I appreciate, and I've been wanting to say something as we've gone through this thing. I appreciate you um, being vulnerable, especially, I don't mean to make it about that, right? I appreciate you being vulnerable as a man, but especially as
Mm,
a black man, about some of your mental health stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
you speak about your anxiety and stuff like that. We don't talk about it enough.
Mm,
If I can leave people with anything, and you talked about, I think you said, like, one of your disorders was attachment disorders,
yeah.
right? Um, I had to deal with that, especially coming back from a deployment, and
Mm,
I wasn't processing. It amplified it coming back from deployment and
yeah.
getting in and talking to somebody. So I won't dive into that, but I'll say this. That's important that with your platform, you seem very, very open with speaking about it. And even if it's just dropping it here and there, that's important that somebody on your stature does that. Um,
Mm,
because you never know, somebody's going to be listening and be like, man, he's talking about it. He's finding ways to deal with it. Let me go and be more open about it. And you're going to save somebody's life in
yeah.
doing so. So I appreciate you. Other than that, man, I would say, even though I talked about fear of failing, um, I don't let that fear hold me back.
Yeah.
I'm going to fail at some things, and I have failed. And I will tell anybody, you don't learn anything by playing it safe.
Yeah.
You might not get scarred up, might not be bruised, but man, you're gonna look back. You're gonna be like, man, I wanted everything, and it's like, but how much did you accomplish?
Yeah.
We accomplish the greatest things when we fail or we fall just a little bit. That bounce back, is something else. So have your fears, but don't let your fears hold you. And the last thing that I would say is, and I told folks this today, especially with you having this podcast, communication rules a nation,
Yeah.
but understanding rules the world. When you're having these conversations, remember to listen
Real.
before you respond. And sometimes think about, do I even need to respond? Maybe I'm just here to listen. Understand and put into action everything that I grasp. So that's all I got, man. And I appreciate you. Thank you for honoring me and letting me be a guest here. Thank you for everything that you do. I mean that. I mean that. I mean that, brother. Since before I knew you to when I knew you, to you just continue to inspire me. Um, so I appreciate you, man. For real.
Most stuff. Sergeant King, appreciate you for coming on. Wise words.
Always.
Hopefully we can probably do a part 2 at some point. I'm a huge fan of repeat guests. But yeah, I definitely appreciate your time, appreciate your insight. Thank you for saying yes. Not everyone does. Not everyone is as open as you've been. I definitely appreciate it.